Hey guys, I just wanted to say thanks for 10,000 subscribers. So for this video, I'm going to momentarily just talk a bit about the channel, myself, and answer some of your questions. I apologize if your question didn't show up. I may have answered your question by proxy, or I just didn't have a good answer. I will say that the first several questions pertain specifically to the channel, and I would say that if you want to listen to any of these questions, I would say to listen to these specifically. Likewise, I've left timestamps for everything. I have a lot of questions to go through, so I'm just going to get right into it. How did you get into Touhou? I think I became a fan officially around 2008. I used to be really big into piano around that time, and I found Marcy 8's music, which I loved listening to. I actually learned his version of Border of Life on piano sometime around high school. From there, YouTube led me to the official tracks, and eventually I landed on the Wikipedia article for it, and things slowly went from there. I listened to more music, I saw fan content, and then I got access to the games. By around 2011, I was researching Eastern religion just so I could better understand the series. So it's been about 15 years as a fan, and about 12 at least as a lore enthusiast. What made you get interested in studying Touhou Lore? Well, once I consumed all of the official media that was available to me, I still felt like I wasn't getting the full experience. So I began reading about the sources of each race, and then the sources of spell cards, and pretty soon I was researching entire religions. What made you want to start a YouTube channel? Oh, where to begin? The idea for this channel started back in 2018 when I was looking at the Western fan presence on YouTube for Touhou. Needless to say, I was disappointed, but I was certain that there had to be an interest in serious long-form Touhou videos. So in late 2018, I had some scripts written. I spent months trying to get really expensive microphones to work on my computer, and I ended up just buying a Blue Yeti, which worked out of the box. So I have a $200-something microphone that I just don't use because it comes up with like really bad static on my computer. But this is where my problem began. I lived on a highway, and it was practically impossible to soundproof my room enough to record audio efficiently. I inevitably came up with the plan to regularly just wake up early and drive out to a nearby lake in my car a couple of hours before I go to work to record clean audio. This was the only time period I could reasonably do it, and it sucked. It was freezing. I could only ever record a couple hours at a time for fear of damaging my mic from the cold and needing to go to work. I asked my friends if I could just stop by their house occasionally to record audio. That was a no-go. There were other reasons preventing me from recording at my old home, but I don't really want to get into that. In the end, I realized I would just burn myself out trying to do this for every video, so I started looking into buying a house. And this is why, despite those events happening in late 2018 to early 2019, my channel started in late 2022. After 3 years of looking while prices doubled, I bought a house, and of course there was still getting it to the point where I could comfortably live there. And in those years of trying to move out, I watched brand new Touhou channels blow up, and honestly, it really sucked because it felt like I was watching something I really wanted slowly leaving me behind over the span of several years. And to clarify, I don't hate those channels for covering Touhou, that's silly, but I felt like I was cheated out of years of videos that I could have uploaded in that time. I was at odds with circumstances that I had to start with in order to get what I wanted. But I didn't give up. I bought a house, I made a brand new script, and I made my first video. So to answer this question properly, what made me want to start YouTube? I wanted to bolster the Western fanbase by bringing attention to aspects about the series that show it's more than just shitty memes and weirdos. And yeah, that means bringing in new fans too. You'll probably hear this in my gatekeeping video, but gatekeeping does not do what the people who do it hope it does. The best thing anyone can do for their favorite community is to just be a net positive within it. You can't actually kick people out of a fan base, that's silly. At best, the bad apples congregate somewhere else, but still interact with the community at large. If you want to make a community better, the best way to do that is to just produce more content that brings a higher percentage of quality fans than what is present in the current fan base. If you do that enough, the community improves. A good way to think about that is like an arbitrarily large can of paint. Green paint is good fans, red paint is bad. There's red and green paint inside of that can. There's no helping that. You can't remove the red from the green. But what you can do is you try to add more green paint than red to the can. If you do that long enough, you're just going to have a mostly green can of paint. It's going to look green, and that's what you really want. And with how niche Touhou is in the West, and frankly how much it can improve, I think my goal is realistic. And quite frankly, in the year I've been on YouTube, maybe it's my imagination, but I feel like that's already begun. And with more quality fans, some percentage of them will go on to create more fan creations of their own. Essentially, it continues the fan base and prevents it from stagnating. And if you recall my second video, I said that all fans are S rank. I genuinely believe that, but if you're a fan of the series, you also want what's best for it, and this is my own answer to that. So there you go, that's why this channel exists. Is there anyone in particular you want to thank? Two people in particular. The first one is my friend who actively helped me with this channel even before I had any success to show for it. Where my other friends would have blown me off, he not only offered ideas, but he helped me with learning video editing software. He made my first thumbnail after I fumbled around trying to get something decent. And he's checked over each one of my videos, every thumbnail I've made afterwards for quality assurance. And since he's fluent in Japanese, he's helped me look over any Japanese text that I didn't trust the translation of. He knows who he is. I'm not going to say his name, but he really helped the channel get on its feet. The second person actually never knew I made a YouTube channel. He was my boss at work, and he was essentially a father figure to me for the past several years. He taught me so much, not only in my line of work, but in life. He gave me opportunities at work that allowed me to stand out and eventually land a string of promotions and raises that made moving out of my house even financially possible. So it's no exaggeration to say that without him, this channel would not exist. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of months ago very suddenly. I just want to believe that, he knows how much he meant to me, and at the very least, I wanted to thank him in my own way in this video. But that said, I don't want to dwell on that, so I'm going to get into some of the more fun questions. Does anyone help you with your videos? Are you open to having other people work on the channel? Aside from my artist who does visuals in the videos, I have my friend who is native Japanese that helps with the translations occasionally. He also looks at the videos and thumbnails before I upload them as a final quality assurance. Because he's not really a Touhou fan, I have an unbiased reference for how well things are explained. However, this also means he lacks context, which can be a problem sometimes. I'm open to having more people helping me with the channel. That said, half a dozen people have already asked me if they could write scripts for my videos. The answer to that will always be no. I want the channel's identity to be consistent, and that it's coming from me rather than some random other person. It's like the YouTube equivalent of the ideas guy, where if you just want to write scripts, your best bet is to make your own channel. As for things I like, I would love to have someone who could help me with editing audio down after I record, like editing out pauses, equalizing volume. Stuff like that takes a ridiculous amount of time. I also wouldn't be against someone doing some editing on the videos as well, but there would be parts where I would want to do it personally. Honestly, I'd love to have someone knowledgeable in Adobe Premiere give me tips and advice in the off chance it could improve my efficiency. Having someone that would be willing to do subtitles for videos would be cool. Other than that, I wouldn't mind having more people that are able and willing to look over script drafts, seeing if I missed things, noting any awkward sentences, pointing out things that should be clarified further, and if I should condense any bits. This is pretty difficult, as I found that a lot of people who want to write or edit my scripts generally have a very different idea of what a good script looks like, and the people who I would love to have edit my scripts, I would not bother them with that sort of work. So I don't actually expect anyone to want to do the editing, but I'm gonna throw that out there just in case someone really wants to. Who are your YouTube inspirations, if any? My audio and intended flow are almost entirely inspired by VaatiVidya. However, a lot of my script tendencies and inspirations are by Action Button and Jacob Geller. And finally, I've gotten a lot of visual editing ideas from Internet Historian. Will you do a Patreon? No. If I asked people to give me money monthly, I would feel obligated to release content at minimum monthly. I do these videos at my own pace and only release them when I feel they are absolutely ready. I would feel financially obligated to release things on a regular schedule, and I just don't have the free time to do that right now. I simply wouldn't feel comfortable receiving money from people monthly if they aren't even getting anything out of it. I know that doesn't stop a lot of creators, but that's just my own principles. I'm actually doing YouTube at a financial loss from recording equipment, commissions, giveaways, and other expenses. That said, if you want to give me money anyways, I have a Ko-fi link in my channel and Twitter. I'll leave it in the description if you want it. Have you ever felt pressure from your channel as it gets more popular? This is a good question. Even before I started, I felt pressure. I was going into YouTube naming myself GensouChronicle and talking about lore. If my videos sucked and my knowledge of the lore was bad, I'd look like an idiot. Of course, I knew that even if my information was good, I would still get people that would question it or even hate on the videos, and that's fine. You just have to expect that the more popular your channel becomes, the more susceptible it's going to be to criticism and hate. But I think what was surprising to me was just how quickly some people latched onto the idea that I was the Touhou Lore guy. By the time my first world building video went out, I was seeing a lot of people saying that. And obviously not everyone thought that. Some people absolutely hated the video, either because they disagreed with the message or they agreed with it, but they disliked that people were recognizing me as the person who put that information out there when they themselves had come to that conclusion on their own many years prior. But after that video and the Reimu ability video, I started to feel a different kind of pressure, because now there were tons of people who held my words as an authority for lore and applied them to their own arguments. Sometimes they did this correctly, and sometimes with varying degrees of misconstruing the point of what I was saying. On one hand, it was humbling to see so many people bringing up my videos in their own discussions in a positive light. But on the other hand, that initial pressure I felt before even starting YouTube to assure my information was correct was now very real. And the thing is, topics like Reimu's floating ability will probably not even be covered again on YouTube. So that will always sit there as the information on it on YouTube. That goes the same for any very, very niche topics I cover in the future. The last thing I want is to spread misinformation. And on the topic of being called the Touhou Lore guy, I want to make it very clear, I am under no illusion that I know the most about the lore. There are plenty of people who know more about it than I do, just by the fact that I don't have the time to look into everything about the series like I could when I was younger, but that's fine. Someone who knows the most about lore isn't necessarily going to make the best videos on it. Even before I started YouTube, I knew for a fact that the people who would hate my lore videos the most would be a subset of people who love the lore. And this would be because either they consider themselves more knowledgeable and that they should be the one in my position. However, knowing is only half of it. The other half is actually presenting it in an interesting and digestible manner, and I felt confident in both of these aspects to be the one to make a serious lore channel, especially because while I might not have the highest passive knowledge of the lore, when I try to make a video on the given topic, I do a bunch of research on it to become, if not the most knowledgeable on that topic, pretty close to it. The other reason they might dislike the video is because they genuinely disagree with the conclusions, which I also expected in some cases. And the only thing I have to say to that is, I'm pissing off the right people. There's a lot of things the community has accepted about the lore that I 100% disagree with, and I wanted to shift the general consensus. And so far, it looks like it's been working. One of the downsides is that some people push the idea that I see the series as infallible, but that's not the case. I just believe that certain aspects are often wrongly criticized, and I want to show that they're good. There's still plenty of things that the series, I think, could do better with, and I will probably mention a couple of those over the course of answering some of these questions. Also, this isn't to say I'm infallible or anything. I try to take every bit of actionable feedback and criticism very seriously. These very specific angry lore fans, from what I've seen about their talks, they don't actually have criticism. Some of them are angry enough that when someone links a video I made, they go out of their way to tell people, I'm not gonna watch that. And then, everyone else does. So I've seen a lot of people tell me not to let criticism get to me, but all I can really say to that is, don't worry about me. I think these people are funny. You can't have thin skin if you're going to do YouTube, especially if you plan to cover a topic that will have very possessive fans. So sorry for the long-winded response, but this was a really good question. What problems have you faced making YouTube videos? Honestly, the biggest one is just finding the free time to do it. I'm constantly busy with so many other things that the best thing I can do is just try to optimize the time I do have. I was initially putting out 2 videos a month with the hope that I could lower it down to 1 a week. Instead, that went up to once a month while still busting my ass and hoping the topic would be something people would be interested in. That's the other thing, really. A lot of my topics that I thought would do really well just didn't get views. The people who do watch those videos love them, and the view duration is really good on them, which just means that people don't want to click on the video. It's still surprising to me, but younger Touhou fans are a much larger percentage of the fan base than I anticipated, which is a good thing for the sake of the long-term health of it. However, this also means that there's a disconnect between what younger fans and older fans might be interested in. So something I've been trying to do is understand what resonates with younger fans. Little fun fact, but if you look at my stats, the average view durations go up linearly with age. And yeah, you could say that I just need to make the topic appealing to that audience, but there's only so much I can do with the title and thumbnail before I'm actually just making shameless clickbait. Though, even despite me explicitly trying to avoid that, I've been accused of that anyway. Maybe I should just bite the bullet and go completely shameless. Either way, I don't want this to come off as me blaming external factors for why certain videos flop. If anything, this is me admitting that I clearly don't know my target audience as well as I should. So to sum it up, I would say that my biggest problems are time and better understanding this younger generation of Touhou fans. Any thoughts on covering things aside from Touhou if you were to grow tired of covering it or wanting to branch out to different things? I don't think I'll ever grow tired of covering it, but I will branch out to do a few more things occasionally. This is partly to avoid fatigue because I just have some ideas that are too good to pass up. YouTubers can grow pretty quickly on a solid but not oversaturated niche. However, assuming that niche is big enough, they can grow pretty big on just that, but even those have their ceilings. Rest assured though, I'd rather have a smaller, dedicated subscriber base that enjoys what I make rather than simply chasing numbers. Getting more subs is nice, but I think channel identity is the most important thing for any YouTuber. I try to make content with that in mind, balanced with potential viewership. Where do you see this channel going in the years to come? Still covering Touhou, but with other things occasionally. Maybe one day I'll branch out into streaming if I'm able to get some people to help me with the more tedious parts of making these videos. I mentioned the possibility of having a podcast as well, way earlier on in the channel's life. I'd still like to do that, but I just don't think it's feasible between needing to constantly find guests that can speak both comfortably and clearly, and of course vetting them. Honestly, looking for guests outside of the Touhou fanbase seems safer at this point. Other than that, maybe 50k subs one day, who knows? I'm not really aiming to maximize subscribers. I would rather have 50,000 cool subscribers than 500,000 annoying ones. Naming yourself GensouChronicle. I wanted a name that people could easily associate with Touhou Lore, but at the same time, the name just means fantasy chronicle. If I was to ever branch out of my channel, I would most likely still be doing lore and analysis videos of things, so the name would still fit, but its roots would still always be Touhou, much like the channel. Will you collaborate with other YouTubers? If so, who? Probably not. When I started YouTube, I figured it would be fun to collab with people, make some content creator friends, and help other people grow / build the community. You know, my end goal. My thoughts on that have evolved a bit. The Touhou community isn't very big in the first place, and even then, you need to find someone that you think would be a good fit to work with. Do they mesh well enough with you to get stuff done without issues? Are your audiences similar enough that it's beneficial? I think it would be cool to collaborate with one of the animator channels, but then it becomes an issue of deciding what sort of video that would be, where it gets uploaded, and a bunch of other things. The big thing is that I get the vibe from some creators that they see other Touhou channels as competitors that they need to beat out, when if you have a decent understanding of YouTube, it's not really like that. With Twitch, it's a zero-sum game. People are generally only going to pick one streamer to watch and maybe one backup streamer when that streamer isn't streaming. But on YouTube, they can watch every single content creator that they enjoy. And YouTube isn't finding viewers for your videos. It's finding videos for their viewers. And if those viewers are watching more Touhou videos, it's more likely that your video might pop up on their feed. Other Touhou content creators should genuinely want a more thriving YouTube community. So yeah, a big part of it is just that some creators on the platform don't seem very inviting, so it's hard to say. I wouldn't be surprised if my first collaboration is with a non-Touhou channel much later on. What is that symbol from your channel and where does it come from? That is the unalome. It is a Buddhist or Hindu symbol that represents the path to enlightenment and spiritual contentment. Since I was doing lore on Eastern-centric series, I figured this would be a really good choice. Also, it looked like it would look good on a mug or a shirt when I start to sell merch. And yes, I was considering viability for merch even before starting the channel. Which game has the best story and why? Probably Touhou 8, just because of how it and Bogetsusho really opens up the world. It also has a lot of my favorite tracks. Which Touhou doujin is objectively the best? We're starting off with a hard one. Poprication's Like a Star trilogy way back when it came out really interested me. There's a lot of really excellent, well-written doujin, but I think this one's my favorite simply because it stars the two main characters of the series. I think if I read through all of the stuff I read throughout the years, I might have a different answer though. Who would win in a fist fight to the death? Akyuu versus Kosuzu. I think the naive answer would simply be to say that Akyuu is frail and would lose. However, I believe her accumulated knowledge is her secret weapon. She likely knows all the weak spots on the human body and the best way to target them. At this point, Kosuzu would have to hope that she can wear Akyuu out before she can land a decisive killing blow. Akyuu would aim for a quick kill, while Kosuzu would benefit from a drawn-out fight where she can finish off a worn-out Akyuu. I don't believe Kosuzu would have this level of foresight though, and would simply charge to her inevitable death. Any recommendations for lesser-known Touhou fan works? Music, doujins, etc.? As far as music is concerned, my absolute favorite circle for more than 10 years has been Hatsune Tsumiko's. I own the majority of their albums, and I'm always trying to look for the ones I'm missing when I go to Japan. Other than that, I'm a big fan of Felt, Zedokine, Foreground Eclipse, Poplika, Seraphit, Sally, A1, Liz Triangle, Pizuya Cell. I could keep going. I'm a huge Eurobeat fan too. I love A1. I'm a huge fan of Odyssey. I can sing pretty much every one of her Touhou songs from memory, as well as several originals. For written work circles, I always recommend Poprication, Bomber Grape, Vivid Grey, Zounose, Kuragitaro, and Ashiyama Yoshinori, just to name some circles of different varieties. Every Touhou character, Fortnite Battle Royale, no abilities. I would have to say that Reimu would probably win. She's a trained soldier and likely knows how and when to swap between going on the defensive and offensive. While I would say some characters like Youmu probably have some innate battle prowess, the fact that this matchup predominantly uses firearms, I think Reimu has a decisive edge over everyone. Who is your favorite Touhou character? I'll just put them on the screen. Here's a couple of my recent top 10s, and here's one I just did. My favorites fluctuate a lot. Did you learn any languages? And if so, how much of an influence has Touhou had on your learning preferences? I'm a native English speaker, but I was close to fluent in Spanish at one point. I never used it though, so I ended up forgetting a lot of the words. And of course, I know a fair bit of Japanese. I'm mostly self-taught, but I did take classes in college for fun. I can recognize about 2,000 kanji and can understand a fair bit of written text. When I do research for my videos, I check the original Japanese text rather than translations, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. The translators usually do a good job, but the wiki, for example, has a lot of old translations that aren't very good. What do you think about Zounose's doujins and fan depictions of Gensokyo as grimdark dystopia with a big focus on cannibalism overall? I think Zounose's reputation for showing Gensokyo as grimdark is way overblown, and I feel like it usually comes from people who haven't actually read their works but have been told about how crazy and dark they are and how there's cannibalism everywhere, which really isn't the case. And I think it's really unfortunate because they are easily one of the best fan work writers. And yeah, there's some darker stories, but not all of them are. What is your favorite Touhou game, official and fan-made? I'll give an official and a fan-made answer. For the official games, I think Imperishable Night is my favorite based on just how much I remember playing it when I was younger. The game was also just huge in scale. I can't speak from a shmup perspective because I'm not the best person to make those judgments, but I like it a lot. For fan games, I think Touhou Mystica Izakaya has been such a fun little diversion that continually comes back to me with every DLC release. It's a comfort game in the best way. Valhalla is another nice comfort game I'd recommend to you if you like Touhou Mystica Izakaya. I think it just barely beats out Puppet Dance Performance for me personally. Puppet Dance Performance is overall more impressive of a game, to the point I think it did Pokemon way better than Game Freak ever could and the game came out like in 2014 or something. I might cover it in a video one day. In any case, my answer is still Touhou Mystia Izakaya. Do you compose music? Not anymore. I used to play piano a lot though. I was originally going to do a cover for the 10K video, but a lot happened and that got pushed off. Maybe one day though. What is your favorite print work? Cajun Lunatic Runegate. Favorite music track from the games? Crimson Belvedere Eastern Dream. What's your favorite music track from the music CDs? Lovely Mound of Cherry Blossoms, Flower of Japan from Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. Will Mima ever return? No. Reimu or Marissa? Reimu. Sorry. Favorite spell card? Great Magic Devil Recitation from Touhou 12, Stage 6, no question. It's also my favorite boss fight in the series, and probably my favorite stage overall. Who are your favorite characters in terms of either design, lore, or music? Yuka has the best music, Suika has the coolest design, and lore's hard. Maybe Koishi. Favorite yokai species? I think Oni are cool. What do you think are the factors that contribute to Touhou's longevity or popularity? This is probably a hot take, but I think the character designs are grossly underappreciated in how much they contributed to Touhou's popularity. Usually people say it's the music, but there's plenty of games that have tons of great music. What makes people drawn to this game in particular and make whole fan albums, animations, games? It was the characters. The music was just a vehicle to express that a lot of the time. I'll probably do a video on this topic that explains it a bit more thoroughly at some point. Favorite characters from each mainline Touhou game? Oh boy, well, I'm just gonna put these on screen. Only one simple question. Suika the best character? Well, she was my first favorite, so probably yeah. Sexy medium Violet Oni. What do you think of the new Touhou characters? They are probably the most stacked cast in terms of design in a very long time. ZUN knocked it out of the park with them. Both in terms of design and their personalities are really stand out. What do you like about their designs? They're hot. I mean, they're unique looking. I always say this, but I see this every time a new game is released as far back as 10 Desires, where people would see the designs and go full doom mode saying they suck, they don't look like Touhou characters, and that the designs are getting worse, and then those characters are very quickly accepted as completely valid and become loved all the same. Seeing it happen almost 12 years later in this exact same way was a really funny told you so moment. I watched every single stage just play out in real time. Do you have some sort of dream content project in mind that you would love to do, but it would require so much effort that you postponed it? Oh, there are too many of these to name. I had a 55-minute comprehensive guide to Touhou that I scrapped after recording all of the audio twice. I don't think that is ever seeing the light of day despite how complete it was. That was recorded back in 2019. A couple of other ideas require a ton of research, but with the added challenge of needing Japanese sources. And then there was a video series I wanted to do that talked about my tabletop campaign that was heavily influenced by Touhou, which would require a ridiculous amount of artwork to help, I think. I might be able to figure out how to do it without that, but currently that's where it stands. Do you think there should be official remakes of old games like EOSD or PCB, even if not personally made by ZUN? No, I'd rather ZUN make new things. Even if he had someone else remake the games, I would want him to do the art and the music. And if he needs to do that, I'd rather he focus on new things. What's your favorite series outside of Touhou? Anime, games, other media in general? I have too many to name. This might be surprising, but Touhou is maybe less than 20% of my interests after starting the YouTube channel. So to name a few game series, I'm a big fan of Pikmin, Katamari, Donkey Kong, Metal Gear, Artanelico, When They Cry, Fire Emblem, Shin Megami Tensei, FromSoft Games, Rune Factory, DDR, Nier, Stalker, Mountain Blade, Outer Wilds. I'm probably missing a bunch of games that I really like though. I'm really big into tabletop. I run a semi-weekly Pathfinder game, which actually eats up most of my weekend between prep and running it. It hurts to admit this, but if I wasn't running that campaign, videos would legitimately come out at like twice the speed with the same level of quality. As for anime, I don't really watch too much these days, but I used to watch a ton. I read manga and light novels sometimes, as far as Japanese media is concerned. I read actual books though. This isn't media related, but I'm also really big into fitness. I mainly stick to resistance training, but I also like jogging and hiking. What's your opinion on the importance of the Touhou series? Do you believe it has left its mark on video games as a medium? A full explanation would require a long, researched video, but I would say it has left a massive, unreplicatable imprint on pop culture in general. It was and still is the perfect storm. Do you think Touhou could make it into some big crossover games, like for example Reimu and Smash Brothers or something? Oh, for sure. Maybe if it got big enough here in the West and people meme it into existence like all the other characters that got into Smash. I'm pretty sure 90% of the people who want certain characters in Smash Bros don't actually play Smash. That said, I think it would be cool. And no, I don't play Smash. Which Touhou character could you beat in a fight in a parking lot at a convenience store at 2 a.m.? Well, I took Kyoko's kneecaps the other day. Are you satisfied with Touhou's style of subtle storytelling and character building? Which Touhou characters or factions would you love to see more background and characterizations of? Yeah, I wish we could get more lore and story faster, but it's hard given how everything comes through ZUN, who's still just one guy. Official manga can only help so much. Personally, I would like to see more of Muran Temple and the Grassroots Network, and of course, Maribel and Renko. Do you find yourself latching onto new characters quickly, or do you wait for side materials and other games to expand them? It's both, but usually it's the latter. I often find that my favorites come from fanworks or depictions that expand my own thoughts on the characters. I think that one exception is On, who continually stole the show whenever she was on the page in official works, but even then I don't even think she makes it into my top 10. I would say it hinges a lot on them just getting a really solid fan reading. Would you be willing to take the lonesome part out of Kagerou's title? Who says I haven't already? Which boss fight made you rage quit as well as the hardest game for you in general? Oh, easily the Millennia fight. Waterfowl Dance is bullshit. The entirety of UFO. Fuck that game. Thoughts on Rumia from the Touhou Project? Very, very cute. Would feed and give soda beverage. How do you feel about some of the pitfalls in ZUN's writing, like the inconsistencies, the repetitive structures, and the underutilizations of some characters? So I'll answer all of these one at a time. I actually tried to find some hard logical faults that couldn't be rationalized in some way, and after looking at stuff and even asking around, nothing really sticks as an outright inconsistency. I know that some people hate when I say this, but I think that time flow could reasonably be explained rationally by ZUN later on if he really wanted to, through border shenanigans or the order of events for concurrent works like the official manga being puzzled out. This isn't to say that there aren't any, but the ones that people tend to bring up aren't clearly contradicted by something else. I think there was like a couple of small instances, like Kaneko saying something in Symposium of Post-Mysticism that was contradicted, and some things about Nazarin in Touhou 19. As for repetitive structures, I'm not really sure what this refers to. I will say I prefer his episodic approach like Sangetsu, Wild and Horned Hermit, or Forbidden Scrollery, with the plot slowly moving forward in the background for the latter two. Underutilizations of characters. I think this is an unfortunate inevitability, and ZUN will never be able to satisfy everyone. There is a huge cast of characters, and he's still one guy. Even with the different manga he oversees, some characters might finally get that spotlight after 10 years, but meanwhile fans of another character are mad that their favorite hasn't shown up in 12 years. I think the ensemble cast games where more than just the protagonist talk to anyone are the best in that regard. I'm talking about the fighting games and the Phantasmagorias. If ZUN did more canon works that allowed more characters to interact with each other, possibly even finding a way to do so in the main shooter games, I think more people would be satisfied. Maybe like a buddies sort of system like Touhou 8 or 11, where the protagonist brings one or more characters along with them and the conversations now include more people. Either that or just a more dialogue-heavy game. It would have to be something other than a shmup, though. When it comes to Touhou fan-made story/doujins, what kind of story do you prefer? I've enjoyed everything from comedies, romance, slice of life, serious character-focused stories. I've read too many fan stories to really count, but I don't have a preference. Can Goku solo the verse? Entirely depends on who's writing the fight. What are the most underrated and overrated Touhou games? Assuming you mean gameplay, I don't know. I'd have to refer to someone who's an expert in understanding it. Gameplay aside, I will say that while I think the SDM cast tends to be relied on too heavily both in fan and canon works, I think hating them for that reason is silly. They are great classic characters. I'll say that I think Touhou 11 though is the most fun to play, and I think that one's the best. Do you think modern Touhou games have been going down in quality? If we're talking about gameplay and content, again, I'd have to refer to someone who actually understands the games better, but just from what I do know, I think the answer would probably lean towards yes. Maybe it's just nostalgia blinding me, but I don't see those wow moments anymore that used to be relatively common. That moment of respite at the end of Touhou 7 Stage 4, that final spell card after Yuyuko's been defeated, the barrage of last word spells at the end of a solid Touhou 8 run, the giant Danmaku from Utsuho in Touhou 11, and of course the absolute spectacle that is Touhou 12 Stage 6. I feel like we don't see those as much anymore. What did you eat for breakfast today? Kiwi, a protein bar, and some dark roast coffee, black. Do you follow any Touhou YouTubers? Technically, I follow all of them. This includes a bunch of them under 1K, so if you made some sort of Touhou content, you have like even a couple of videos, even if you don't have a lot of subs, I probably know who you are. I'm always trying to gauge the interest of Touhou fans on the platform to decide what video ideas I should cover next. Plus, it's hard to determine what works and what doesn't quickly when I release videos so slow. So if you remember back to one of the problems I have, which is just trying to understand why certain videos do well and why some don't, this is part of the reason for it. I don't have much room to experiment, so sometimes I'm able to learn things about what topics people respond well to from other channels. You could say it's less to follow the channels themselves and more just field research for mine. I do genuinely like watching some of the animation channels though. I really like Mushroom's content. He's actually been following my channel since the very beginning. Also, Nidorush is really good. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think I've watched their Chamada theme video like 50 times. And yeah, for those people who have been here for a long time and comment on every video, follow me on Twitter, I do recognize all of you, and I appreciate your continued support. For real, I mean that 100%. But in any case, I'm happy to see that we're getting a lot of great animation channels recently. Maybe one day, some more lore channels will show up. I genuinely love that, because if you recall in one of my earlier questions, I said how you really want a solid community on YouTube so that if people watch one of those videos, they will watch other similar videos, or at the very least, it'll show up in their feed, and you want that. One channel called Key Smash recently started doing really good lore videos on Touhou's Printworks. I highly recommend checking them out. They're at about 1,000 subs right now, so maybe head over there and let them know I sent you. Their editing is better than even a lot of the bigger Touhou YouTubers, and they point out some really interesting things when going over each of these works. Do you feel the overall quality of Touhou's story, world building, and characters went downhill in recent times? For example, newer character designs not really having hit magic that made older ones so special. Nope. I think it's the same as always, possibly better, speaking from 15 years of experience. Every time a new game is released, I'm gonna say it again. The new cast gets called trash, and then the doom posting about the end of quality of the series begins again. I remember it happening forever. I'm not gonna say it again. Anyway, I'm pretty sure a lot of modern fans consider Touhou 13 like classic. Especially considering it was before a lot of them even knew what Touhou was. Have you ever seen or read the fanwork YouReimu and its follow-up ReiReimu? If yes, what were your thoughts on it and its apparent impacts in the series and fandom? Whew, this is awkward. I'm literally recording the audio for this video on the first part. Well, the first part of the video should be up by now, so you'll have an answer. But I liked it. I don't think I'll be making a follow-up video, unfortunately, which is fine since I didn't really care for the sequel as much. Have you played the Danmaku engine fan game Concealed the Conclusion? If yes, what were your thoughts on it? Especially on how it's become a sort of ironic time capsule of pre-Mountain of Faith era Touhou fandom and lore. Yes, I think I want to hold off on saying too much because it's worthy of its own video, but ironic time capsule is a good way to put it, I think. I'll say for now that I think it was really cool for its time, and it has some really good music. How do you feel about the future of Touhou as a series, and how long do you plan on staying involved with Touhou directly, whether it be as a content creator or purely as a fan? Well, I've been a fan for 15 years. There have been times I've strayed away from it because of work or school eating up too much time, but I think it's at a point where I'm always going to be a fan. As far as content creator is concerned, I think the answer is probably the same, though I'll occasionally branch out to other topics at some point. I have a list of over 100 video ideas, and maybe 10% are non-Touhou videos that I think are just too good to ignore. What do you think about Yamame? She's okay. If I read some good fan works about her, I might like her more. Which video that you've made so far are you most proud of? Most proud of my second world building video. Literal months of research and writing went into that one, and I even tried upping my video editing just for that one video. I thought that one was going to take off like crazy because of how the first one did, and it really sucked to see that it ended up being my worst performing video at the time. It sucked to see that, especially since I was dealing with a really serious death at the time that really hit me hard immediately after that. I'm still not entirely sure why the video did as poorly as it did, and I did a lot of research to try and figure out like what part of it didn't click, like why people didn't click on it. And the only conclusion I could really come to was that possibly my first world building video only did as well as it did because Tolkien was trending at the time due to Rings of Power, but I'm not entirely convinced by that. I'm most proud of that one, but I think the best video I've made is the ReiReimu's ability video. What's your favorite Touhou character theme? Maybe Sukuna's? Kine's? Probably Byakuren's, honestly. Hard to say. What's your favorite Touhou stage theme? This is tough. I'm going to go with Bamboo Forest of the Full Moon. Some other ones would be Dream Palace, Great Mausoleum, Shanghai Tea House, Chinese Tea, Fall of Fall, Autumnal Waterfall. There's probably a ton you could bring up that I would stick on there too. What is your favorite staff roll theme? The OG, Crimson Belvedere, Eastern Dream. If you could ask ZUN one question about the world and lore of Touhou, and he had to answer you honestly, what would it be? This is a tough one. There's so many of these things. Probably the truth about Yukari and Maribel, or the complete truth surrounding Imperishable Knight's Phantasm stage. Do you like Rinnosuke? He's funny. How do you get ideas for your video concepts? They just come to me. I write them down, and I have a text document, like I said, with more than 100 ideas written. I usually just pick from whatever I feel like. When I do those community polls for video ideas, it's always just to gauge interest for each of them. They don't actually lock any video order. I'm not going to suddenly pick whichever one's going to win, and I think people have noticed that at this point. But I just want to say that here for anyone that doesn't look at the community posts. What steps do you take to turn the vision you have into an actual video? Oh, well, research is either done during the previous video's creation process or after. This takes anywhere from a day to several months depending on the topic. I write the script, which can take anywhere from a few hours to a few days. Then I record audio, which can take a couple of days depending on how many retakes I decide to do, how long the script is, and then there's adjusting volume to be even with the editing, all down to removing needless pauses, and this can take hours. It is probably the least efficient part of my process, and I really do want to speed that up a bit, honestly. After that, I spend a while picking the right music, editing it all to flow in and out at the best times depending on topics and the vibe I want for each section in the video. And then after that, the actual editing happens. And I can spend anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple of hours per 1 minute of video. That might sound like a lot, but I'd rather have something with more effort than just talking over some random gameplay footage, unless I'm actually talking about said game, or if I just am making a video where I'm just giving out all of my thoughts over a long period of time, sort of like this one. Those are the two exceptions to that. Otherwise, it just feels kind of lazy. So, for instance, my second world building video took over 24 hours to edit. While I'm doing all of this, I'm brainstorming a good title and thumbnail. And these are both super important because they determine if someone clicks on a video. If they don't even click on the video, it doesn't matter how good the video is. And sometimes I can have a really good idea for a title and thumbnail in mind. By the time I finish the video, I can edit it together in like 20 minutes, like I did with my ReiReimu ability video. Other times, I've spent a couple hours just trying to get it right, like my Mistia thumbnail. Any advice for beginning on making videos? Speaking as someone who has specifically looked at a ton of smaller channels in the Touhou scene to see what they might be doing wrong, if a channel is struggling to grow past a couple hundred subs, it's usually at least one of the following. 1. Their voice is hard to listen to, either from not speaking clear, audible English or low audio. If you do narrated videos, this can make people want to click off immediately because if the creator can't be asked to have good audio quality, why would whatever they have to say be worth listening to? Number 2, they ramble or they take too long to get to the point of the video. Cut out anything unnecessary. No intros, just get right into the topic. Always aim to condense information. Number 3, Their thumbnails are terrible. This is the biggest offender in my opinion. Please, for the love of God, Google how to make a good thumbnail. Just like with the audio, if your thumbnail looks like it was made in 5 minutes in Microsoft Paint, people will assume you didn't put any effort into the video. And like I said, if they don't even click on it, whatever you did in the video doesn't matter. I do have a fourth thing that I see a lot with Touhou channels specifically, is that a lot of them just don't have unique or interesting ideas. They'll do the cookie cutter intro to Touhou, complete with the elevator pitch, and then they'll just start to review the games starting from 6, or they'll try to talk about different characters by really poorly summarizing the wiki. And here's the thing, some of the channels I've seen that do this actually create really good videos. The problem is that so many people do these topics that anyone who would already be curious enough to know the basic information about individual games probably already knows them. They're not going to click on the video. And I think the exception would be if it's a bigger YouTuber talking about it, in which case people may click on it specifically to hear their thoughts on it. So my advice, if you're trying to grow from that really small point, is to try to think of ideas outside of these really, really basic things in order to stand out and build your initial following, especially if you are a very small YouTuber. Do you think that other mythologies that may not be exclusively Eastern have a place in Touhou? I think so. It's just a matter of ZUN waking up one day and getting hooked on some new mythology. We already have plenty of Western influences. Do you think that the early Windows games have aged poorly? From a casual perspective, I think it's the opposite. The old games have a lot of very memorable moments, and the music is still some of the best. You'd have to ask someone who's actually good at the games for a gameplay perspective, though. Are you planning on covering fan-made Touhou series like Koichi Komeji's Heart-Throbbing Adventure or Grossland Story or something else? If I feel like it's worth it, yeah, it's hard to say for topics other people have already covered. There are times creators cover something without researching the topic properly, and it puts me in a weird spot where I'll have something really meaningful to say about that specific topic, but the fact that other people might pass on my video having seen another person cover it already kind of dissuades me from doing that. And besides that, I'm not really hurting on original ideas. Either way, when I go into fan stuff, I try to relate it to the series and fan base perspective at large. What are your thoughts on Orin? Her theme from Touhou 11 is a lot of fun and her title is cool. I also like her speech habits in Japanese. She's a pretty brutal boss in the games, but I think her spell cards are really cool. Do you think ZUN will kill off any characters such as Akyuu? Nope. Did you think you would reach 10k subscribers? This might sound bad, but I only ever questioned how long it would take. My first serious estimate was about 8 months after hitting 1k in my first month. It ended up taking about a year though, mostly due to my uploads becoming way less frequent and partly because some of my ideas didn't land as well as I thought they would. Which characters from PC98 should make a comeback? Maybe Shinki. I'm fine with none of them coming back though. Do you have any headcanons that differ from the usual interpretations of characters? Differ? Not really. Built off of pretty much every single one, though I'd call it less headcanon and more just theorizing. I like to write in my spare time, so building off of the characters from what we have is a lot of fun to me. Why did you just leave the bodies in the streets instead of digging holes for them? Why would I give Orin more work to do? Which method of entering Gensokyo would you use to get in? The back door, like everyone else. What was your favorite Cajun the Lunatic Renegade chapter and why? Well, just so you all know, Luigi Adventure is my favorite commenter, so I reread Cajun the Lunatic Renegade just to give him an answer. It's Moko's chapter. It doesn't feel like something from Touhou. Not only do we learn about Moko, but it feels a lot darker in presentation than anything else in canon. Do you think it's plausible for the PC98 games to ever be remade and perhaps have their own plot adaptations to be more in line with modern storyline? Very unlikely. ZUN doesn't care for that part of his game development past, and the bits he doesn't want to dig up are too deeply connected with the games. How do you feel regarding fanfics or doujins that attempt to flesh out Gensokyo more or use more creative liberties to change aspects of it? If it's a good story, that's all that matters. Even changing established aspects is fine as long as the work makes it very clear to the audience so they don't get confused by it. Do you play much of the original games, and if so, do you have any achievement that you're particularly proud of? I wish I had more time to play them these days. I used to play them a lot in high school. I'm probably most proud of my Touhou 11 normal 1 credit clear. There have been a lot of gameplay questions I've noticed. I wonder if people assume I don't suck at the games. Personal opinions on Reimu, Marissa, Sakuya, and Kijin Seija. I've grown to appreciate Reimu a lot over the years. She's a really expressive character in so many ways. Unfortunately, I think there's a huge disconnect between how I see canon Reimu and how a lot of other people see her. And I want to make a video that just focuses on talking about her as a person at some point. Marissa's cool too. I want to make a similar video that just goes over her as a character. Sakuya hasn't ever really been a favorite or anything, but she's a really fun character and she has a lot of really funny moments I found, especially in the manga. Seija is consistently in my top 5 favorite characters though. Do you like Akyuu? Yeah, her design's really cute. I love that we finally got a better idea of what she was like in Forbidden Scrollery. Fan game recommendations. I don't really like too many fan games to be honest, but to recommend some, Touhou Misty Izakaya, Touhou Puppet Dance Performance, Touhou Rhythm Carnival are the ones I like. Artificial Dream in Arcadia just came out, but I'm also loving that a lot, and it's a contender for one of the greats for sure. How many of the games have you played / 1 credit cleared? Everything Touhou 1 to 14 I have 1 credit cleared on normal except for Touhou 12. I've also beaten all the fighting games and some of the spin-offs. Do you have any completed no miss or no bomb runs? Hell no. I suck. Which Touhou character has the best hat? I like Kine's house hat. What was the process behind picking Akyuu as your channel's mascot? I didn't. Everyone else decided it was, and I just sort of rolled with it. I remember reading that you had your focus on Final Fantasy XIV before shifting it onto Touhou Project. If true, what was the reason? Yeah, so starting my channel hinged on moving out, and prior to doing that, I was actually heavily invested into Final Fantasy XIV, and I would actually consider myself very well versed in the lore. I considered doing Final Fantasy XIV lore videos around that time. However, I quit the game for good after finishing the last expansion's story, and I didn't like the direction they were going with it. This was a good thing because it would be a nightmare trying to balance 2 completely divorced topics on this channel. And the main goal for my channel was and always will be Touhou related. What aspects of the Touhou franchise do you find the most fascinating? I think the thing that has always fascinated me is not the amount of fans it has, but the density of creative and interesting people within the fan base. From a young age, I would always see Touhou fans influencing pop culture in the most unforeseen ways. Touhou fans were creating all these cool fan animations and even entire games when the indie scene was still relatively small. It felt like a fan base of all things was ahead of the rest of the world in what it was capable of, which is absolutely ridiculous to think about. So that was all the questions I have, and that concludes my Q&A video. If you made it through the whole video, I appreciate it, and well, you can hopefully expect more videos from me in the near future. So I'll see you then. Bye.